Hello and welcome in to another episode of Offensively Accurate, hosted by yours truly, Atlas Thug. And today we have a good one for you. Today I figured I was going to do something a little bit different, but this is at the back of the fact that I have a lot of people in my audience who want me to do a bit more of a comprehensive look at some of the evidence, and I feel like I do need to do that given the fact that we have had some new developments. So we are going to take a hard look at 15 glaring holes in the Charlie Kirk assassination timeline and official narrative. And what you and I are going to do together, we are going to steel man the official narrative, largely to say we're going to find if we can even defend in the slightest the official narrative from the evidence that we have come to understand and know. And it is good to see you guys in here. Lord of the Reed, Tradlam, Steve Splendid, Takes Bomber, Adrian. It is nice to see you as well, too. That was close. Dark Cell, as always. We're going to get into it. So thank you guys for being here. We appreciate it. I appreciate it. As well, on top of that, we are also going to have my intro radicalize you. That's hilarious. Thank you for the super chat, Lord of the Reed. I appreciate that. Put it on screen here. We have not only just that will be the bulk, the featured story of today. But we have two other elements we're going to react to, and a third news story, or a fourth element, which is a news story. Long live Charlie Kirk. Yes, sir. I appreciate that. The second is going to be the Alex Clark and Andrew Korvel interview that actually happened today as well. Most people are talking about the Patrick Bet David and Nick Fuentes collab. Going under the radar is in fact the producer, right-hand man, Andrew Korvel, the individual who posted on X that Charlie Kirk is the Man of Steel and that they found the bullet under his skin and all of that, which we'll get into here in a little bit. He had a tell-all interview with Alex Clark, and I thought that was interesting, so I wanted to go ahead and take a look and see if anything was there. I only got halfway through it, but I picked up some of the major pieces. It kind of turned into a bit of a you go boss girl about Erica Kirk, but there was a little bit of revealing information. We will cover that. So to get things to start off with, we're going to go right into some of the bulk of is Tyler Robinson a patsy? So I separated this into 15 different major glaring holes. Everything that I've seen has either come from Zeb Boykin or Ian Carroll. I didn't really look at too many other sources. I wanted to keep it in-house to people who I trust. Obviously, I trust Zeb Boykin, and I can trust Ian Carroll for what he is, but if you were asking me who is trustworthy in this space, I would at least put Ian Carroll on some level of trustworthiness. So just give you an idea of everything where it's come from. So the first thing, let me get this on screen here. We are going to have a little bit of some imagery here to help us through this. Not that though. The first aspect, the first hole in the story that is going around that I believe is worthy of bringing up is George Zinn. I think this is the one that I actually don't have even a slight bit of defense for, even if I wanted to steelman this. So I'm sure everybody's familiar with who this is. Make him a bit bigger for everybody at home. So he's the 70-some-year-old Ashkenazi Jew. Made a huge commotion in the crowd, claiming he was the shooter. Dark Cell, no, I will not see you in Valhalla. But this guy basically he was a distraction. He caused a commotion. He caused a ruckus. He got angry, or not angry, but he was yelling. Basically said that, he did it. It was later found out that he did tell reporters that he did it intentionally to help the shooter escape. So I think by itself, that's a confession of accomplice. I don't know if that actually tracks per the charge. But the big thing with him, the first noticeable thing with him, is the fact that he has a history of showing up at major world events. This man pictured here, not only was here at the Charlie Kirk shooting, but he was also a witness to 9/11. And he also called in a fake bomb threat in the wake of the Boston Marathon bombing. So the way that this has kind of been categorized of who this is from the, Israel did it and they're not believing the official narrative, is that this has the hallmarks of a spy. Because who else would you expect to always be showing up at major world events where things are happening? So that's one of the first kind of points there. This, I have to say, I cannot think of any steelman for this individual, especially given the fact that he was later arrested for obstruction of justice and also possession of CP. I'm curious if he's not already taken his if he's been sent to Israel so he doesn't get extradited. I haven't followed up on that aspect of it. But I guess if I was to have any level of defense, or I wanted to steelman this guy, I mean, I'll throw this to the chat. What do you guys say? Like, what if you were to think of like what is the best excuse the government could go with, or some explanation of who this person is and why they would be there? I can't think of it at all. So my only thought really goes to, well, we know in the Jewish community, there's a certain kind of predisposition to schizophrenia. So I guess if I had the best defense possible, it would be that, he was just crazy. He had a bout of, senile or something. Yeah, exactly. He had a bout of possibly being over the top insane, or he was having an episode. This one I do think has a strong hesitation element around it. And I think by far is the one that you really can't give a strong answer to. But that also brings us to the second element of this, which I'll put on screen here too. The second element is actually the second suspect who is apprehended. Now, the reason why he's not talked about quite a lot is because he was not held for very long. On top of that, everybody knows George is in by name. If I ask my chat, what is the second suspect's name? The majority of you wouldn't be able to know, but I did add it in one of my recent videos. The second person who was apprehended, his name was Zachariah Ahmed Qureshi. So even if you Google this, I will go to news here, and I want you to see what I saw. So when I did this story coverage, when I covered this, they make this so everyone can see this. If you look up Zachariah Ahmed Qureshi in Google, you will get 3 search results, period, for news. And that is it. And they are all in the same time frame. So I thought that by itself was odd. Now, for those who aren't familiar, both of those articles that are legitimate, one's Crime Online, which is just a repost of the article, but the two that are real articles, one is from WFAA, the second is from the Salt Lake Tribune, which I can probably make a little bit bigger so you guys can see that, so I'm not just messing with you. What you will see is the WFAA is reporting it because they're a regional news outlet that is close to, I'm having on top chat, I apologize. Switched it to live chat. WFAA is based in northern Texas, which is supposedly where this Zachariah kid is from. The parents said they never were told, neither was he, the reason for why he was apprehended in the first place, which I'm going to be honest, I think I found a through line there, which we'll get to later when we get to the text message exchange. So as the story goes, from their perspective, he has no idea why he was apprehended. He wasn't apprehended for very long, and then he was essentially just released. Family didn't give any details. The reason why it's confusing is because most news articles, when they said second suspect apprehended, they were referencing a man who was arrested also in Utah, I believe it's in Provo, not Orem. The second man there's actually a third man, was arrested because he was just simply walking around with an air rifle. But this happened in Provo, not Orem, and wasn't close. The reason why it got floated out and reported as such was because there was a individual who had left the Charlie Kirk event, who had actually witnessed the arrest happening, was taking a camera photo because he assumed the person being arrested with the weapon had to have had to do with something with Charlie Kirk. It just turned out wrong place, wrong time. It wasn't the guy, and he doesn't look anything like him either. The guy they arrested's got long hair, looks like Russell Brand, but homeless. And Zachariah Qureshi, I'll put it on screen here, looks exactly like the name kind of implies. Amish, I'll blow this up a bit bigger, Amish, Mormon, but that is him. And even with that, the photo that was originally floated around came from his BYU tag, or BYU college ID, which was him a lot younger, so it didn't even match where, his older self anyways. That one, I think I have an answer for as to why he was apprehended. But as so far as it went, it basically was very quickly. We had a second suspect, then we didn't, and the only kind of tell we got from it was from Kash Patel posting it on his X. I think this one can probably be explained away. I'll say now, I do think this was simply just a basic technical error. I think that this was a basic kind of mistake that was made by the FBI, but there is something that kind of gives me pause. We'll get to that. And again, it's in the text message exchange between Tyler Robinson and Lance Twiggs that I think shines a bit more light on this in particular. But moving on from there, the next element, so that's the second one, right? So we have the first is George Zinn. I think that can't be explained. Possibly it could be explained, but it's requires a bit of subjective belief. Yes, actually spot on. That's spot on there. The second element is the second suspect who was apprehended, who was in and out of custody in like a couple of hours and then basically disappeared. No one talked about it. I think that one's just curious in the element of why didn't it get more coverage? You would expect people like Ian Carroll and others to go deeper. But in Ian Carroll's video he posted yesterday, he didn't even know about the WFFA report or FAA report, which makes me think like, why was he not even spending a bit more extra time kind of covering this guy? He didn't even know what his name was. But maybe that's because Ian's already written him off, and I think you can too. But we'll get to that. We'll get a little bit further along. The third's going to go to the photos of him with his backpack in the stairwell. So the reason why this is questionable is at first the official narrative is they have him, they know this is him. This is the individual who supposedly is concealing a weapon and a rifle coming onto campus. This is the guy. This is who they matched up with, who's running across the rooftop. However, upon looking at this, your first thoughts go, where is the rifle then? Well, you would think, okay, I think there's an easy steel manning there of the official narrative, which is it's disassembled in his backpack. There's no way it's in his pants. And I'm going to explain it to you like this. So this is pre the shot being fired. There's no way this is in his pants. I would take the official narrative side here. It would probably be disassembled in his backpack. Would have to be if this was the case. As you look at this photo, you'll see on the leftmost image, his right leg is bent at the knee. If you look at the rightmost image, his left leg is bent at the knee. Which to me, I will say, it's a hard stretch to be able to sit there and say, yes, he has a rifle and somewhere in his pants. How? Both his legs are bent. I don't see it. That would have to be it's disassembled in his backpack. And then you get to the fact of, so now he's disassembling, assembling, disassembling, assembling, which we'll get to a little bit later on. But the photos of him with his legs being bent, the rifle supposedly being used is a pretty big gun and it can't be broken down or collapsed very well. So this is the third kind of hole, which is, in a broader sense, not the photos themselves, but the only thing that we have connecting this individual with the rifle is a very, very, very subjective minute and 37 seconds worth of footage that is very grainy, very tiny, that some people are on the side of the fence of, he has the rifle. Some people are on the other side of the fence of, he doesn't have the rifle. And Ian Carroll made a great point, which is this video is carrying a lot of weight. You know, it's doing a lot of heavy lifting, if you will. And I think that's the point. The point here is we have nothing outside of the FBI telling us in grainy subjective video footage that showed definitive proof this individual photographed here was at any point actually wielding or carrying a rifle. So the fourth thing would be then the actual parking lot video that was released itself. So this was actually, I believe, the second video that was released. There was a shorter one that was initially released that did just show the individual running across the rooftop. Well, forgive me. Let's see if we can get this video to load, if X would like to work. Oh, that's lovely. I bet you the video is not going to load on the one time I want to cover it. We'll find another one, I guess. But the issue with that video is, again, it's like the extended version. It's like extended cut here. He has something in his hand. The question that becomes, though, what is this item that's in this man's hand? Could it be the screwdriver that they found on the roof, or is it the rifle? So let me try to reload this tweet here. All right, let me find another one. Apparently that is not going to work with us. It would be the rooftop shooter. Let me actually, because we know how Twitter is, let me make sure I can find it first before anything graphic appears on screen. I would like to have this in front of us because I do think it's important to be able to actually go through it. I need to be able to find the minute and 37-second version. I'm hoping that every internet spelled shooter wrong. Lord have mercy. Doesn't matter how much preparation you do, there was somehow always going to be a problem. And trust me, I've been working on this since I woke up this morning around 9. I need the minute and a half version. That's all I'm looking for. Minute and a half version. Got it. Found it. Breaking 911. Cool. Putting this back on screen here. This is the second video that was published. I'll just make it big. You don't need to see me. This was the second video that was published. Really was the fuller version of the original. And it's basically the extension of where you can see him getting down and off the roof. So we have Ian and many do not think, so here it is, right, running across the roof here. So we get closer, and it's here that he's got something in hand, backpack clearly, but it looks like there is something longer in that same hand, almost like a cloth is draped over it, right? The towel argument here. So as he comes down off the ground, he lands, hits the ground, takes off. Okay, there we go. That's the extended version. Now here's where I'm going to stop it here. The point that Ian made here that I thought was actually spectacular was there is the fact that a gunshot round was fired seconds previously to this individual jumping off a roof and running down that grassy knoll. The other element that I think is more relevant than that's more relevant than that is the sound from the crowd. The crowd was screaming and roaring too. What you don't see here is a reaction from people out here. Now, what I will say, and I mean this, I don't think you can put any amount of stock into human being reaction. And the reason why, and I'm going to say this, Irina Zarutsky, the girl who was stabbed to death on the train. I mean, there were 5 people within 4 foot of her that didn't even react to her getting stabbed to death. So, and given how people are on their phones, given the average kind of like IQ and the average person, the normie, if you will, I think it's imperative we don't put a lot of stock in human reaction. I think it's good to point out, but I don't think it holds a lot of weight ultimately. And Steve is asking, was the stairwell photo before or after the shot was taken? It was before the shot was taken. The stairwell photo was taken before the shot was taken, which to steelman that position, I'll say it again, I think the steelman position from the FBI, the official narrative would be, he brought it disassembled. He assembled it somewhere on campus, then took the shot. The reason why it doesn't make much sense is because the FBI says he had a screwdriver, he disassembled it, then reassembled it in the woods. That's like, again, a big moment of a big stretch, if you will, but we'll get to that here in a second. With this parking lot video, though, the thing that, again, is this, if this is all that we have to go off of, right, is this video here. Let me just cut some of this out, too. I mean, like, I'm sorry, like, I don't even think this could hold up in court. of he has a rifle, he could have an umbrella, he could have a pogo stick. I don't, what would he possibly have? It's way ultimately too subjective, and I don't think it would meet the burden of proof of either or. I think they would just have to say you'd have to have a non-answer, just a direct non-answer on that. To be honest, I don't think that's definitive by any means. So then, but to steel man it, I guess you would say, look, there's a strap. He's clearly got it. He concealed it. It's not in his pants. It's not in his pants. That I think is by itself is dumb, because think about the fact of if you have say even a 30-inch, anything beyond like 2 foot, you have that in your pants and you jump that far. I mean, the idea that he would have his pants on, like the idea that gun wouldn't blow a hole through his pants when he landed because of the shock or just the awkwardness of it, or at least blow a seam somewhere. I don't, to me, it's like, there's no way. And the only issue is there's no way he disassembled it either, based on the video evidence that we do have and the timeline that we have been given, which points itself back again to the screwdriver. But again, on that though, and I guess the bigger thing though too is you would expect though, if I heard the crowd shouting, I get if it's like the campus or you're at like the amusement park, you're kind of used to hearing crowds kind of woo in like different, more consistently in a more patterned behavior because they're all, amusement park. But I would at least expect if you heard that coming from UVU, right, of all places, I wouldn't expect that to be a normal thing. I would expect more of a reaction from people on the crowd. But again, how much stock do you want to put in human being reaction? It's kind of hard to take that stance. And we have Lord of the Ree here saying that they had more evidence when charging Kyle Rittenhouse, and he was obviously innocent and acted in self-defense. And that's true. The big thing with the Kyle Rittenhouse video evidence is that was actually thrown out on proxy of AI, actually, but not AI in the sense that you would understand. AI in the sense that not all, but I believe the majority of any kind of post-processing digital media, video editor, when you zoom in to a object, what it's doing as you zoom in is it's basically guessing by the pixels next to the pixels. They kind of inform themselves what color or what should be in these certain pixels. Yeah, interpolation. Thank you, Lord of the Ree. So that's why it was thrown out, because ultimately the more you zoom in, the less real the video becomes, the more it's actually just generated, it's artifacting. So that was ultimately why that was thrown out. That video was because it was zoomed in and it was transformed in a little bit and the judge wasn't willing to have it. This video is even harder than that. I mean, this video, from what you see on screen, put it back on screen, this is already artifacted. Like this is already zoomed in to a certain degree, and you can maybe tell from the blurriness, but I can definitely tell it's on my big screen over here. It's not that there's no way this holds up in court. So that I think is the other glaring hole, which is they're going to have to at some point be able to definitively connect the rifle to the person in the photos, which then they got to also make the argument that that person is also Tyler Robinson beyond that. And then Marcus Young, nice to see you, brother. He says, yo, what is up, Marcus? I appreciate that. BS says, PBD is Jew-owned. Charlie dies. Then all of a sudden, Nick magically becomes mainstream. Trust me, I've been seeing a lot of that. And then Tix Bomber with the contextualization. A typical 30-06 rifle will be 46 inches, 24-inch barrel, and a 22-inch to 23-inch stock. And that is the point. There's no way a fully assembled rifle is in his pants anywhere. But again, we are trying to steel man the official narrative. We are trying to think of ways. We're trying to argue for the government's behalf. And even just thinking about how to argue on the government's behalf, it becomes very hard to defend what they have said so far. But thank you again, Lord of the Ree. I appreciate the super chat very much, brother. So moving on, we'll go to the screwdriver claim because it is connected to the rooftop here. Ultimately, there's no other video to be added here on screen, but the official narrative is, again, that he had disassembled this rifle to conceal it after the shot was taken. But even then, it's a vote of low confidence that he was concealing the rifle from the video and the photos that we have. TikTok is flooded. I'm sure many of you guys have already seen it. It's probably been on outside the Overton as well. Many people have gone to work to show you timing themselves, disassembling similar rifles, or if not the same exact one, as fast as they possibly can. And the fastest that people can even get is like 50 seconds, a minute. But from the photo evidence that we have, once the shot is taken, he is moving. So unless this is, Flash Gordon in the flesh, and the government somehow was able to arrest a superhero, not possible. Not possible. But that is the element, though, which is if he didn't disassemble it, why did he have the screwdriver? But I think that could be easily thrown away as such as he probably brought all of his tools with him in the backpack. So who's to say he didn't have a second or a third or a fourth screwdriver? That, if you have 10 screwdrivers, you're not going to care if you leave one. He's probably not thinking in the moment as well, too. And now, ultimately, maybe it's just, in the moment, he wasn't thinking about what he would possibly was leaving behind. We have Chet in here from also House. He says, I think they're saying he dropped it off the roof and ran off with it in the towel. Interesting. Okay, so we're steelmanning the government's position, or the official narrative, rather. So then the question would be, he dropped it off the roof. So would there be any indication that we can see that? Ultimately taking a chance there, I guess, but maybe, it's something small like that too. Who knows? And again, having to do the frame by frame here. I guess he does grab something off the ground. Forgive me, I didn't even have it on screen here. Let me pull this back up a little bit. Make this bigger for you guys to see here. Make this super big. Right here, he does grab something. As he hits the ground, I would say it looks to me more like he probably just put his hands on the ground because he fell. It wasn't fun. But he clearly is maneuvering something. Okay, so we're steel manning the government's position. So say that is a rifle. And he's making sure the towel is covering it. Okay. And here's what I'll say. I think that position doesn't even need to be steel manned that much. What was the thing that most people were saying was up with the scope? That it would slide back too much. But that makes sense, not if you look at it from the perspective of the government hastily threw it together. It makes sense in the sense of if he fell with it in hand or he threw it off the building, that there would be damage to the scope, that it would have gotten slid back at some point. And I see that almost as if he was hanging on to the scope as he fell off the building. The rifle hits the ground as he's got his hand on the scope. It yanks it, breaks the scope down the slide. Thus, it's in this awkward position. So to steel man that aspect of the official narrative, if you will. So the screwdriver one is the one where it starts to really open up a lot of these kind of holes. Also, nice to see you, Donnie. Appreciate you being in here. So what we have going on from here, again, TikTok being flooded with all the people, timing themselves, trying to do it as fast as possible. But maybe that was just it. Maybe he never disassembled it at all. The FBI is just wrong. They made they're incompetent, or whatever. They just made a mistake, or that's what they thought, and they were just wrong about it. And maybe the screwdriver had only been there simply because he had assembled it. And maybe the screwdriver they found was when he had assembled it when he was on the rooftop, and then he had just left it then. So when he takes the shot, he actually never picks up the screwdriver in the second time, and it stays where he had originally shot the rifle from. So there is also that. The issue, though, in all of this is that we know for a fact, and I'll make this a bit bigger, or a bit smaller. What we know, though, for a fact is that the FBI has footage that starts 3 seconds prior to this. That's a clear view. So you can see it here on this left-hand side. That's a clear view of where he would have taken the shot from. So the question then becomes, for what reason would the FBI not post those extra 3 seconds? Because then you end up knocking out 2 birds with 1 stone. You blow away the theory from Zeb and many others that there is actually a whole different angle and the shooter was not on that rooftop, but also that you would then have the definitive proof that this person running across the roof had fired a weapon. Wouldn't connect it to the explicit rifle, but it would at least be a definitive proof that this person did at least fire a weapon at some point, connecting him somewhere. But right now, it's detached. So it does become a question of like, and you can see from this angle as well too. I mean, I'll make it a bit bigger. Like it can't be the graphic angle. You can't see Kirk. You can't see anything. You can't see anything there. I'll make it a bit bigger. All you would see is you have just a clear view of him. So I guess if anyone could help Steelman, why would the government not release the first 3 seconds of that video? Yeah, enhance. Alexa, enhance. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe there is. Maybe there is some kind of pragmatic reason, but it's hard to buy. It's hard to buy. They released 1 minute and 37 seconds and they couldn't release the first 3, especially when a lot of the people in that camp are consistently coming out and going, hey guys, like it's so distasteful. You guys keep asking questions. Like it's so distasteful that Erica Kirk has to address these things. It's so distasteful. I tell you what's distasteful, and this is a side point, that entire memorial service, brother. WWE meets Joel Osteen's mega church. There were no tears, not even alligator tears, man. And that's a secondary point. We'll get to that later on. Yeah. Hey, Grok, why is the first 3 minutes of this? Grok, please tell me the answer. Will the Constitution help me here? I thought that was funny. I'm missing my place here, but I guess I'm going to find my place here. Again, the issue though being there's no time to disassemble. So to Steelman the official narrative, perhaps the FBI just got ahead of themselves. What they wrote in their report was just simply wrong. It was a wrong calculation from themselves. They shouldn't have had it in the report. They should have put allegedly and not put it in there as, verbatim fact. But I do think that does a little bit, at least, explain the weird scope placement. I would add, I guess, one element in there too. There was a thing that Ian Carroll had highlighted that I've not seen anywhere else, but there is a New York Post article that had initially reported on this, talking about the imported nature of the Mauser rifle. That article has been deleted. I'm sure you could find the archive of it, but it is gone. I didn't think it would be worth it to even look at what was on there. I think it was just talking about the serialized nature and how these guns have to basically be, tracked, and the way that serialization went on for that weapon, given the era that it was, prominent in. So we are going to move on to the text messages. And the text messages, when posted, were immediately pushed back on. And again, there's 2 camps with the text messages. You have the camp of, they don't believe that. They think the FBI wrote them. And then you also have the camp of, let me open this in a new tab so it's bigger. Then you also have the camp of, this is very easily believable. Camp goes, oh, I can believe this. FBI would never write this. I will say, I think Kai Clips, Mr. Kai Schwimmer, probably gave some of the better defenses of the Steelman position of the official narrative. This one in particular, he did make a few points about such as like emoji usage and some of like the smiley faces. I'm still on the fence about this one. And here's what I think is the biggest glaring hole in there. Do you remember how earlier that I pointed out to you guys that not only the family had not been given notice of why the second suspect was brought into custody? So we have this article, and I'll put it back on screen actually. We'll do this. We'll visit that real quick. So the second suspect that was apprehended in the hours after, Zachariah Ahmad Qureshi. Let me actually grab this here. Let me just type it in. So not only does he not know why he was brought in, his family does not know why he was brought in. The subject of both of these articles that I will about to put on screen here is the fact that they don't know why he was detained. Let me see if I can find it explicitly here. I don't know if that's the one that they worded here, but basically you can see here that this article goes on. Let me get rid of this. I'll blow it up a bit. This article goes on to describe how the family is upset because he didn't have anything to do with it. So because they immediately caught on to the fact that this guy was, not involved or supposedly, that they immediately issued corrections. They're like, we're going to do everything to make sure he doesn't get doxxed. He was 25 feet away when Kirk was shot. How was he being interviewed? Like, he was right there. So it's the Salt Lake Tribune that I think has the headline. So the headline from the Salt Lake Tribune is, let me put it over here. You can see it. Parents blame sloppy police work for son's brief detainment. The subline here is the family members say they have no idea why he was detained after he attended the Kirk event. And there's been no update since on their end. And again, I'll show you, as you go back out here, his name brings up 3 results, 3 news results. But I will say, what is one of the through lines with a lot of these assassinations? It's the 3-named man, right? It is the 3-named man who appears, suddenly and ultimately has something to do with it. This is the hole in the text messages. So going back over to the text messages, let me put this back on screen. The FBI didn't know, they didn't give a response. They make this a bit smaller so it's easier to read, so it's all on screen here. Oh man, I made it way too big. I'm sorry, guys. So let's see it here. Let's look at this second line, okay? So this is Robinson saying, I'm still okay, my love. I'm stuck here. So his roommate, Mr. Twiggs or whatever, responds and they go, you weren't the one who did it, right? He goes, I am. I'm sorry. The roommate responds, I thought they caught the person. Then this is the part. Robinson responds, no, they grabbed some crazy old dude, then interrogated someone in similar clothing. How would he know that is why they grabbed Zachariah Ahmad Qureshi? How would he know that they interrogated him because of the similar clothing if both the articles that we have from the public purview say nothing about it, and we have, when you look up his name, there's nothing there? If you were asking me, I know we're trying to steal me on the official narrative, I do think that's a legitimate issue, and I do think that is a point of contention in the element that someone in the government wrote this, given the fact that they had knowledge of why Zachariah was actually apprehended in the first place. So, that to me was a bit of a shocker, if you will, because I wasn't expecting to catch that, but I did as I was going through a lot of it. And from this, though, the text messages themselves, people just aren't buying. Now, I know I had a little bit up there, but again, I was listening to a good bit of Kai clips, and I thought he had a great point. We're right after this insane event that's very rare, doesn't happen very often. It's not like, assassinations on any level have become any degree of, what would you say, worth, I guess, common. But the idea here is like, you are in this environment, especially as a kid his age, the moment that he probably pulled the trigger, probably even leading up to even before he pulled the trigger, I can't imagine how much adrenaline was running through his body. And then I think after the fact, and so we're saying we're going along with the official narrative, and this is we're steelmaning the official narrative. I think the reason why it comes off so unnatural, so not real to people, is because he probably was in this odd element of where he is like romanticizing what he's done. He's romanticizing this, to a certain degree. Now, it could be for a bunch of different elements. It could be because he truly believes what he did, or maybe it's because he ultimately immediately regretted what he did, but now he is psychologically, defending himself from taking on accountability and blame. The brain does some weird things when you do awful stuff like this, and that is erring on the side of the official narrative. So I do think that that should be brought into account, and if he is supposedly like this insane, deranged leftoid, I wouldn't put it past him that he has, he would immediately default to this, right? Some guy who's got 2,600 hours in VR chat, but doesn't have a social media profile. I can imagine doing weird things like that and immediately kind of placing himself like he's God, he's the main character in the story, doing things like that. And again, steel manning the official narrative. I don't know how many times I'll say that. And I apologize. Looks like my internet is struggling a little bit. It looks like I caught I dropped a lot of frames. So apologies for that. Hopefully it doesn't keep up. Maybe I'm saying too much on the nose. Normally it doesn't drop frames like that. So then from there, I do think that is a big issue, which is the text messages. And somebody put it in here, they do need to release the Discord logs. The thing is Ken Klippenstein, or Klippenstein, whatever you want to say, right? I know, I get it, Stein. He published an article that supposedly he had gotten into personal contact with other individuals in the Discord server. Now, he argues and posts some of the screenshots that was given to him. That's the first issue right there. Those could be selectively grabbed screenshots and screen logs. I didn't hear Ken Klippenstein say that he had full access to the Discord, so he's probably just working with what they gave him. But I will say, from what they gave Ken, it does not have the markings from what I would expect would be a Trantifa network that is, working to establish and build and collectivize and communicate, the downfall of America as, the official narrative would have you believe. But I think the easy answer there is to say people can be in multiple different Discord servers. Who's to say that didn't happen in a different one? They're looking in the wrong spot. I will say it was a bit odd that Discord, and I said this early on, that Discord immediately, given the climate, right after what had happened, immediately came out and said, nope, he didn't plan it on our Discord. We did an investigation. No, he didn't do it. But on the other side of that, I've not seen a follow-up going after Discord outside of like the verbal lashing, like, we're going to worry about the radicalization on your platforms. I've not seen any furtherance from the government pushing them on that. And if truth be told from what we have, maybe that is true. Maybe it was a way to weasel their words and that he didn't plan it on there. But ultimately, we do know he did confess to it on Discord. But it's the reaction that's also confusing because everyone's like, whoa, no, Charlie didn't deserve that. Are you serious? Are you joking with us right now? That to me does not read like the reaction. Unless they are like 89D chess playing it and these guys are masterminds and they're already messaging each other knowing that this is going to be looked at, 72 hours from now. Right? But again, we need to see the Discord logs. I think that's important. That's another big element that we would need to see. And so take Ken Klippenstein's work for what you will. You can find that. He's publicly posted it a couple of times. You can find the Discord logs there. But I would say, you got to take it with a grain of salt. And erring, again, on the official narrative side, because we're steel manning for them, they could be selectively grabbed screenshots from the people who are trying to basically, run cover for them. Because, again, if you were in this Discord server and you were not expecting what had happened, you would probably want to cover your six as well, too. So I think that one's an easy one that we can steel man there. So now it's point number 6, which is, well, I guess that's point number 8. We skip number 7. We'll go back to number 7. Number 6 are the text messages. Number 8 is the Discord messages. But again, being described as a terminally online kid with zero social media profile, we see that on the right. That's where we see that. We typically don't see it very much from where a person is online a lot on the left and isn't vocal. On the right, that's very common. We get these autists, right? But typically on the left, if they are terminally online, they are very vocal. They're on their eighth burner on Reddit. So I think that by itself is a bit odd. And I do understand that people, in Gen Z in particular, there is a type of autist. My younger brother, I believe, is one of these kinds of individuals. Very, very, very introspective, doesn't talk at all, but does play video games a lot, exists online a lot, but has zero social media presence. But again, I would consider him on the right wing. And I think the back and forth is something I find it hard to believe that in the climate happening, in the hours literally after the shooting, Discord would have the balls to lie to such a degree, knowing what would be on the other side of that. Maybe that's just me. But point number 7, we're going to move on to the DQ photo, or the Dairy Queen photo, which was published by Candace Owens a few days after the fact, which showed us a couple of things. One that showed us is that he was at a Dairy Queen that was less than 15 to 17 minutes away from where the shooting occurred, and the body language presented in the photo does not match something that you would expect to see from an individual who just carried out an assassination from a prominent public figure, let alone being the obviously most wanted man in America. Now, I guess if I was to steelman the official narrative on that end, it kind of lines up with the fact that this person was mentally unwell. That maybe they were in this period of romanticizing what they had done. They know like it's inevitable until something happens. And maybe they just basically decided, I'm going to get DQ before I go. It's hard, and I'm going to say this again, not even just from the reaction from the crowd, but for the shooter himself. Given what we know about human consciousness, the tricks that the brain can play, the way that human psychology works, I think, again, what aids the official narrative here is knowing that you cannot put that much stock into the mental state of somebody who just killed someone a few hours ago. You don't know what possibly could have been triggered in their head after firing that round. And so I think to expect a stereotypical response from a very rare occurrence is that's kind of Hollywood. I think that's the Hollywood element. We're looking for something we see normally, and I think that's something that you probably shouldn't be doing. It's the wrong parameter to be holding. But I guess a point in the favor of the official narrative there. But also from there, though, I would say that it is odd seeing the timeline, though, and I guess we would have to then figure out, how did he go and dump this off? At what point did he go and dump the rifle? Where did he go it? Like, did he go back and forth? Was he driving his car? This does then bring in the element of like, was there someone else helping him drive around, or was he doing this all by himself? But it's odd. It's very odd. Point number 9, going alongside the body language aspect of this, what I would say here too, going number 9, and I'm going to grab it and pull it up. I'm going to have it playing in the background, just so as I'm talking, we'll understand this. There was body cam footage of Tyler Robinson that was posted from 2022. I don't remember who had originally posted it. Let me make sure I can turn this volume off here. But this is the video, and I'll go ahead and just have it in full screen playing in the background here. I'll make it a bit bigger. But the idea here is that the body language and the way he's responding to questions, the way he's talking, and again, this is in 2022, it doesn't come across as what you would get from like a typical leftist, right? He just seems like a normal kind of guy. If anything, he's wearing like what I'd consider just like basic kind of right-wing clothing. I don't think it's right-wing in the sense that he's not trying to do anything fashionable, right? He's not trying to dress up for anybody. He's not trying to go, outside the bounds or anything. So that is one thing. So this was found by Scripps News, but it's from 2022. And so that's where I think you can come into steelman for the official narrative. I think there is an argument that could be made. How quickly can the radical, progressive ideology work on somebody? And maybe this is a testament to just how quickly somebody can be radicalized. Quite possibly, yes, maybe, no. But I do think that is an element. And I do think the fact that it's, 2022, I'm not sure, I don't remember what month it was from. Probably even if it was closer to the end of the month and you give us about a 2-year time frame, or even a 1.5-year time frame. I think on the 1-year time frame, it gets a little rough, but I think if we're closer to 2 years, 2.5 years, I think it's possible that somebody could have been radicalized that quickly. I basically went from not wondering why we support Israel to, extreme Nick was an enjoyer, Groyper in a matter of like a year and a half. So I do think that people can have very quick and radical changes ideologically, given the social media and digital information delivery system that we have, and the fact that it is ubiquitous, the fact that every time you do open your phone, you're going to see something like that. It's not a hard push for me to believe it. I think it would be difficult, and if the circumstances were there, but at the same time, I do think that there is a greater than zero and definitely probably greater than 5 to 10% chance that this could happen to somebody and be radicalized that quickly. But that is the 9th glaring hole in the entire narrative here, trying to steel man for him. Now, beyond that, though, there's the good household angle. So this one's not been talked about too much, but it ropes in a couple other things, and there's not a direct connection here. So most people maybe don't know this, but Tyler Robinson went to Utah State. And he went to Utah State for a single semester. I believe he was enrolled in their pre-engineering program. But the thing with Utah State, however, is that Utah State has uniquely strong ties to the CIA. I had never heard of this before, so I started to look into it. And sure enough, you go to Utah State, and it's the CAI at USU, not the CIA. And it's funny. So it's called the Center for Anticipatory Intelligence. And again, major shout out to Ian Carroll. I wouldn't even know this was a thing unless I just watched the TikTok from that one lady, but he covered this in a bit more detail. But it's a section here, and it's called the Center for Anticipatory Intelligence. So I'll put this up on screen. I'll make it a bit bigger. So level up your career options, yada, yada, yada. So you kind of think about, well, what is it, right? So it's a master's degree, anticipatory intelligence. It's all about, security, which basically, is all talking about intelligence networking. They basically have like a direct pipeline to the CIA. They brag about on their About Us page that they basically have a huge turnover. That and the founders of the program are both from the CIA. I believe one is a former head. So there's like two major CIA assets who basically founded it, built it, and run it currently. Yes. He got shot at Utah Valley. Tyler Robinson attended Utah State prior to the shooting. He dropped out after only serving, I believe it was only a semester. I don't think it was longer than that. But Tyler Robinson attended Utah State. So Tyler Robinson went to Utah State. The shooting happened at UVU, so not Utah State. But to bring in the idea that it's not all that common that a kid who, from him, good household, he drops out, but he comes from a good household. He had a 4.0 GPA. He had a 34 ACT score. He had a $32,000 presidential grant or scholarship, whatever you want to call it, to go, and he drops out just to go back home. That, I think, is confusing. But let's steelman it. Let's go with let's err on the side of the official narrative. So if we err on the side of the official narrative, and this kid is an extreme introvert autist who's terminally online but no profile because he doesn't like interacting with people, well, then there's your answer. It didn't matter how much money you're throwing at it. If this kid is having crippling social anxiety from having to be at university and attend classrooms and doing things like that, partnering up with people, it makes sense why he would have dropped out. there are people on this world that no amount of money will be able to get them to break free of their social anxiety. I actually have a personal anecdotal story about this. I have to actually be careful about how much information I share because it was a previous profession I was a part of. But there was a client that I had dealt with whose son had basically made it all the way into 36 years old, barely leaving the house. And it wasn't money that broke it open for him. It was, she eventually had to like do this, a lot of like therapy and things. The guy basically broke out of it and now he works at Blue Origin. So, now he works at a rocket company for Bezos, I believe. I think that's the right name. But it's the point to say, like, people will sit through a lot and tolerate a lot and not to do a lot because they are quite ultimately, so beholden to their social anxiety. And that's just kind of the society we live in. So to steel man the official narrative there, well, maybe he dropped out because he simply couldn't handle hanging with the other kids and he was struggling, on those aspects. So there is that. But on the other side of that, though, is the MK Ultra, the CIA. Was he a project kid? Was he targeted for all of these tendencies? And was he used by the CIA? Thus, he was basically propagated and geared towards it and groomed towards it. And, whenever he attended the university, I think it was in 2021. So there is that possibility. But I do think it's if you used Occam's razor there, which again, can you even apply? Can we even use Occam's razor anymore? I guess on a more simpler way to frame it would be, I think the easier acceptable answer given the official narrative and to steelman it would be, kid just couldn't handle other people. So there's that one. The issue, and then I need to add this. The issue is there's no direct connection to this at all. The only connection is that he did attend Utah State University. We don't have like a smoking gun that he was like in this program. We don't have a smoking gun that he spoke to anybody that works in this program, faculty, staff members, intern, TAs, nothing. So this is actually all complete hypothetical. There's no direct connection, but it is something I do think is worth pointing out because it's relevant to the history and background of Tyler Robinson. I do apologize, guys. I'm seeing that the chat's not catching up. I'm so very sorry. I think it is probably because I'm covering this story in particular. Who knows? So then we get to point number 11. And point number 11 is when I actually started to lean towards the Israel Intelligence Agency angle. And that reason is Andrew Korvet and his tweet. If you are unfamiliar with who Andrew Korvet is the, what's the best way to say this? Right-hand man. He's a bit more than just like the producer of the Charlie Kirk show. He is ultimately considered like, the closest to Charlie, at least in this space. He's not a private friend. I want to make this a bit bigger, actually, so you guys can read it completely. So this is the tweet. Make it a bit smaller, actually. This is the tweet. And I'm telling you, when I saw this, I immediately was like, okay, I'm out. I can't defend the official narrative. Maybe I'll just say nothing. I'll pretend I'm like, oh yeah, like it's definitely this leftist. And it's for multiple reasons. So as Ian would say, it made the story go from dumb to insane. It went from to nuclear. And the reason being is so he directly actually addresses the lack of an exit wound. And he actually begins in this, right? I want to address some of the discussion about the lack of an exit wound. And then you had so many people quoting it going like, oh, the horror that he has to address like the greatest political assassination that's happened since previous presidents and other figures. And he's got to answer questions because nobody believes the FBI. Oh, woe is me. Dude, when I saw that, it's just like, man, go clutch your pearls somewhere else. I don't trust the people telling me the story. I want the answers. Like, F you for telling me like it's distasteful to ask questions. And especially like distasteful to ask questions after the fact that Erica Kirk went up on stage and did what she did. And it's like, it's so performative and unbelievable. It's like, okay, now I have more questions, not less. And I might even ask the ones that you told me not to earlier. But Andrew Korvet basically says that Charlie Kirk is a man of steel. That's the broader point to be made here. That Charlie Kirk is a man of steel, that he answers some of the questions about the autopsy that no one's seen and the surgeon who dealt with it. and some of the ballistics angle here. So he claims in this tweet that he spoke with the person who worked on Charlie in the hospital. That is this line right here. But the claim from Zeb, OTO, Valhalla, and many other guys who are doing the ballistics here, the claim is that this should have not only went through him, but through multiple people behind him. If it was what they're saying it should have and can go through multiple moose, multiple elk, multiple deer. Some people were even doing tests with cinder blocks and concrete, showing just how powerful the rounds were, as long as that's what the official narrative is. And so they add, it's a miracle that nobody else is getting killed. I gotta say, the Man of Steel bit, it's cueing the eye roll in me. Now, what I will say is a little sad and unfortunate is I would like to think we do live in a world where miracles can happen. So I would like to at least throw that out there. I know that might be a little bit too preachy for people, or maybe too outside the bounds. But I do believe, though, there is a slight element you could say, was this a miracle, right? Is there, even if it's a less than 1% chance, is there a chance that this was just blatantly a miracle? Is that a chance? I'm not saying I believe that. I'm just saying, is there a chance? It's just, it's something. And Fox Taco, I think you have your answer. I think you've said it like 5 times now. Beyond that, though, is the claim that goes beyond there, which is, it would be more believable if the argument here through this tweet was that it bounced around through Charlie's bones and the bone density, and that it splintered and simply just broke open, and it was like, it just kind of deteriorated. But that's not what they say. He goes on to say that he found it beneath the skin. In the end, the coroner did find the bullet just beneath the skin. And so with that, you just go, there's no way. There's no way it bounced all the way through his body and slowly just lost heat and thermodynamic energy slowly over time, and then just like stopped somewhere in his skin and never came out of his body. Like that, to me, I'm telling you, it's too much. And I think the only Steelman position that they have with the official narrative is to lean into the Christian element, lean into the Man of Steel, lean into the hero role, and run with it, because I think that's the only thing on that side of the aisle for him, is that, God was literally had Charlie's back there. Or quite frankly, had the people in the crowd's back when he protected the fact that the bullet didn't go through and penetrate any more people. It is, it's just to me, and Alex Jones is calling BS too. That was the thing, is he was one of the first ones that I ended up seeing from it that covered it. And when I saw him even begin to go, like he had that sigh where it's like, what do you say to this? That's when I was like, okay, like I not an ounce of my soul believes this narrative right now. Not at all. And to continue off from here, this is when it starts touching into the ballistics of it here. And so it's 30-6. Plus, if it was this front entry wound, there's this major glaring hole that there's no blood splatter behind or out the back of the neck, if that was the front hole. But then you have to make the claim that the vertebrae, which is one of the most fragile bones in the entire body, was the bone that deflected the bullet. That's the one where you begin to go, okay, now we're getting into like, I could understand it if it was like, oh, and like it did deflect it, but it's because it hit like the densest bone in the body, like right over here. And it's like, that's not what's happening there. It's like, you got to keep getting sold and sold and sold. But again, we are trying to steelman. We're trying to steelman the official narrative. So I do think that the only steelman there is that, God literally had Charlie's back. And I think that's a bit easier to sell knowing who Charlie Kirk is. And I think that's pretty easy to sell. So a smaller, but still a point, number 12, the wound itself. What has been presented by the official narrative is that the visible wound seen on camera is the entry wound. that they are saying what you're seeing, the hole in Kirk's neck, getting hit, boom, falling back, going sideways, that is the entry wound. The opposing side couldn't be any further from that. The opposing side, on the other element, is arguing, like Zeb and Valhalla, is actually that it came from around anywhere from like 4 to 6 o'clock. I think probably not even 6 o'clock, anywhere from like 3 to 5 o'clock, like behind and from the right. And in their favor is the fact that the entry wound, being that size, matches with the 30-06 coming out this way. Because as Lord of the Rings just said, what I was getting ready to say, is if the entry wound is as big as that, you should expect an apple-sized hole in the back of his neck. But that wasn't there. So you have to go on this extreme kind of belief, right? That it did. That it did just, it had all that force, right? They're making you believe that the vapor trail's what's ripping up through his shirt, all that force, and the most fragile bone in Charlie's body stopped it. Doug St. Laurent says, watch that video. I don't know what video you're talking about. If you tell me, as long as it's not the one of assassination, I'm not going to watch his head get blown off. 13. So 13 is the crack bang analysis. Crack bang analysis is what Zeb has asked people to help him do. And if you put it on screen here, basically, and this really only works with, I think, non-subsonic ammunition, so all ammunition that breaks the sound barrier. I have it on screen here. Maybe I need to make this a bit bigger, but just give you a basic idea of what is it. Crack bang analysis is essentially a field-based technique for estimating the distance to a shooter by measuring the time delay between the two sounds a supersonic bullet produces. So the crack and the bang, crack being the sonic boom and the bang being the muzzle blast. So two distinct sounds. So basically what they do in the crack bang analysis is they look at the distance between those two sounds, the time distance between them, and they use that to get a approximation of how far away the recording device is from the shot being fired. What you can do from there, though, is the fact that we had multiple cameras recording. With multiple cameras recording, what we end up having is now we have multiple points of reference, which allows them, if you at least have three, you can begin to triangulate. You'll never know if you won't watch it. Guys, we're trying to do something serious. I can't do the whole retarded, like you came in here, you blew in from Retardistan yesterday. I have seen the Charlie Kirk stuff. You think this is the only video on my YouTube channel? I just woke up today and I fucking said, all right, let's cover Charlie Kirk blindly. Don't be retarded in my chat, dude. Like, I'm going to start banning people personally for just being fucking retarded. Anyways, from there, though, this entire thing, right, is the complete inverse. So the furthest that you can get from between these two camps is on the ballistics angle. And so the cool part was, not only do we have 3 points of reference, we do have a couple people doing individual work. So one of them being that you have 7 points on a board. Now, this person's individual. The only issue, though, is this person didn't show their work. I don't know if there's been an update on that. The Ian Carroll video that I covered is only like 12 hours old, if you will. It was posted like last night. So I don't think there's any update to that. So what I will say, though, and I'll put it up on here. Let me find this, actually. Or I don't know if I have it. I'll look up the sound triangulation. Hopefully it'll be one of the first ones that we see here. It is here. So this is the 7-point, and I'll make this one a lot bigger in the new tab. Let me zoom out a little bit. I apologize. I'll make this a lot bigger. So what you have here, I'll kind of move it down a little bit. What you have here is each of these circles represents essentially a camera that picked up the crack and the bang. So each of them, now I couldn't tell you at all, I'm not an expert on this by any means, what the difference in diameter of each of these are. But the point being is that all of these circles have a cross line here, which you can tell on the bottom right there. All those lines intersect. You can see it like right here, a little bit above where my finger's at. And that is evidence in the direction that it was the angle that the, what do they, people call them, conspirators, that Zeb and many others have been saying, which was that matches the sound from being up to the right of Kirk. So if you can see that on screen, well, I don't know, I just made it smaller. If you see the pin mark, let me make that bigger. The pin mark on the rooftop, that is where the shooter supposedly shot from. That doesn't match anywhere close to the sound signatures that they have. Now, what's cool about this is there's one person in particular, and his name's John Cullen. I'm going to actually make this smaller. John Cullen, and it's funny, John Cullen was sourced by Ian Carroll in the video that he covered there. The funny part about it, though, however, is John Cullen blocked Zeb Boykin. Zeb Boykin, being from outside the Overton, is another one of these guys, one of the, covering the ballistics. I wouldn't say Guntober, he does a lot more than that. Who's covering this, and they have each other blocked. So there is a sentiment out there that John Cullen is like, just not the nicest person to work around. So I guess Ian Carroll gives him his flowers because John Cullen did a lot of good work with the Las Vegas shooting. So take that for what you will. But he has Zeb blocked. And that part is funny. But ultimately, he also has been doing his own work. I don't think they've communicated with the guy who did this chart that Zeb has talked to, but they've been doing their own triangulation. And on theirs, if you'll notice the two big circles on the left-hand side, the yellow and the purple, they had very similar circles drawn up on John Cullen's feed. I can't remember where I caught that at. I think it was Crowdsource the Truth is who was posting snippets of that. But again, both of those, two different elements, Jeet Free Valhalla, that's funny, both of those are showing that their crackbang analysis isn't even getting close to where the rooftop is, indicating that the shooter is a lot closer in range and distance to Charlie than what is initially led to believe from the official narrative. The Steelman for this, I think, is easy. Well, I hesitate to say easy. I think the answer to the Steelman answer is easy to come up with, hard to prove. I think the Steelman answer would be, how do you trust the iPhone quality audio? How are you tracking for all of these being different devices, right? Like if one of them is a 4K camera by Sony, I don't even know who makes cameras anymore. If one of them is from like Fifine, if another's from Nokia, two of them are iPhones, one of these is from an Android. And then also, Zeb has actually made mention of this multiple times. It happens in a literal auditorium. And auditoriums are designed in such a way that sound reverberates, meaning that it probably amplifies this. Given that we know that, they would probably need to also include in their equations to plan for that, making their circles bigger, which may actually stretch to the rooftop. The only thing is, even with all of that, if you were to make all the circles bigger, they're still not going to interconnect where that rooftop pin is at, and you're going to make it bigger here. It will just connect further away in the same angle and the same distance that the gun tumors have been pushing. Anyways, so I think that one is something that needs to be looked at too. What I will say, this being very technical, and a lot of people probably immediately go, the moment somebody starts bringing up how to triangulate this stuff, I think you would need to be able to see some work, be able to show the work. And this would probably be something that would have to be like actually, brought up in court and testimony, having witnesses, expert witnesses, going back and forth. He goes, I question you, I counter question you, and so on from there. But I do think it is a point strongly in favor of the, not official narrative, if you will. We have Father Bell, let's just read this here. He says, I was saying as a setup a week ago, and I kept getting muted in chat. You're just trying to follow Nick and wait for his take because you don't want to lose money. You guys are all grifters. I have said the entire time I didn't know what the case was. But sure, go ahead. I don't even care. I don't know how many times I have to say it. Yeah, I work for the government. Yeah, me, dude, just ban this guy, dude. You don't even deserve a response, you fucking retard. I would say so much worse, but I don't. I want to honor God. Charlie Kirk just passed away. We need to be above reproach. Just go be insane somewhere else, man. I hope you find the answers you're looking for. Truly, truly do. Um, so that's part of the crackbang analysis. There's two different ones. You have John Collins, crowdsourced the truth, and then you have the one coming from the solo individual who's put together, I think, the best looking one so far. But again, we need to see a bit more work. At least he could make a video explaining his process, how he did it. I think that would be helpful. Then you have the cell phone footage that is what shows the bullets in frame. Now, I couldn't find as good of a video besides literally the one that Ian Carroll had.
Go to website.
Come on now, don't blow my ears out. So I'm going to find it. I have the timestamp for it, actually. It's at the 47-minute mark and 33 seconds, if you guys want to see this yourself. It's the clearest frame I've seen of this. Let me find it here. 47 minutes and 33 second mark. I will grab it and pull it up here. It's right around here, because the issue is, it's not the frame of itself, which we can find it here. It's a little bit before back, actually. Let me find it. Yeah, there it is. I'll make this a bit bigger too. So what he's looking at here is, in this frame, supposedly, what we're seeing is a bullet being caught by a phone. Now, I know that's a little difficult to see with me doing the scrubbing here, but that's supposedly, I'm trying to find if I can get it on the bullet here. Get the best one. Okay, there we go. So you see this? You got this streak right here. That is supposedly, this bullet being caught in here. But the reason I have the timestamp at 47:33 was because Ian Carroll did the analysis. Because a lot of people's pushback on this aspect specifically was, how does a phone, and an iPhone in particular, catch, a cell phone, catch a bullet? Like, is that even possible? The bullets move that slowly? Does an iPhone camera work that well? On this element, there's two things, because what I will say is, I'd have to scroll up on that video for you to see it. But the way Ian does this is cameras capturing things in 60 FPS. For those of you who have iPhones, I want you to do me a favor. If you go to your camera on your phone, I'll do it with you guys as well. If you go to your camera on your phone and you go over to video, what you will notice in the top right-hand corner of your phone, which I'll show it on mine, I can find out the camera here, is the number 30. If you can see that on mine, maybe you can't. That is because the iPhone defaults at 30 frames per second. Ian Carroll ran all of these at 60 frames per second, which your iPhone can do, but it's not the default. You actually have to tap on it. So there's already, for me, another burden of having to believe that every person who's taking these videos immediately flipped their stuff over to 60 FPS. I can believe that in the sense of people who just were there wanting to capture the best video possible, not because they're trying to capture a bullet, but because they want the best 60 FPS of video of Charlie. But also, I have to believe there's a lot of this video footage of people who simply just grabbed their phone and immediately pulled it out to show it, to get Charlie on camera. They probably weren't paying attention to what, FPS it was in. And the reason why that's important, and it's actually very important, is because the FPS it is recording in will determine literally how many frames per second it's capturing. So if we go from 60 to 30, that drops his probabilities by quite a lot. So he ran two different ones, because Ian Carroll himself is actually not fully convinced that it is 30-6. And the reason why is because if the angle's a lot closer, the sound's a lot closer, you can work with a lot smaller ammunition and ultimately get the same results. And it depends on the feet per second. So there's two different FPSs working here, frames per second and feet per second. And a lot of that is determinative. But what you will find is on here that there's the answer for this. If it was 30-6 at 60 FPS, there's a 95% probability this is from ChatGPT or Grok or whatever, no, Claude, it's on Claude. that likely 2 to 3 frames would capture that round on it. And if it was a handgun, so if we're going smaller, right, we're going 45 ACP, we're going, or not, if we're going just ACP, we're going 9mm, we're going, smaller ammunition, smaller rounds, it's a lot more likely, it's almost double as likely, because it's moving much slower. So that is an element to think of. I do think if you were to steelman that, you could simply write it off as also an artifact. Again, it's not definitive, but it's a line of evidence that actually stocks itself with also, yes, it is after exiting, because it's heading out of Kirk's neck here, down towards the table, which then also brings into the paver element, the construction happening immediately after the fact, on top of the window decals being replaced. So I think that also would imply it hit both of those spots. They're constructing, they're cleaning up on it. That's points in the unofficial narrative. I think the official narrative has plenty of ways that they could run around with the construction. They could say, well, we had only a couple temporary events going on. We had, this was a planned thing. They could go with, they wanted to put up a new memorial for Charlie Kirk. There's a lot of different things they could go with. They could go with, they wanted to make sure it's clean up and safe. I don't know how much I would buy those excuses, but they have a lot to go with there on the construction element of it. It's just funny. Like, dude, people think like I work for the government. It is wild. But that is, in essence, to roping together, there is a lot of things that point to an unofficial narrative, and it is kind of odd and curious when all of those unofficial things also begin to connect themselves. That's not to say everything. That's not to include the hand palm gun guys. That's not to include the trapdoor from the Candace Owen stuff. Like, I think I like Candace for certain elements. I do think that she is ultimately really damaging her career to a lot of people. And that's not because of her Israel position. I think that is because she's beginning to come off a little bit of schizo, even to me. And I'm somebody who doesn't ultimately couple myself to a lot of or let me say it this way. I don't get emotional when somebody says something I disagree with. Even if it's somebody who's on our side. I will if I think it's out of completely bad faith. With her, I just think that's just who she is. Maybe there's elements of nefarious there too, but I just feel bad because I think she's really going to put a hole for herself if a lot of this doesn't end up connecting. But I'm rooting for her. Anybody ultimately that's not, part of the elite, I'll root for. But I do think she is part of the elite now at this point. And if we move on from here, though, we get into 2 more newer elements. So 14 and 15 are kind of more new. So last one is 13, and that covers the crack bang analysis, the triangulation, then the cell phone footage that all line up with the angling and the ballistics that was covered previously, that wraps in together as well with the entry wound and exit wound. Again, those all kind of connect with each other. Number 14 is one that's not been talked about a lot, but I think because it is very easily dismissible in the same light that you can dismiss the subjectivity from the rifle being present in the video, that is carrying a lot of weight. And the reason being, so John Colin, to bring him up again, John Colin, drones, there's multiple flying objects on camera. Now, a lot of it's been debunked. It's been insects, birds. There are a couple, though, that are clearly what seem to me even are drones. So the funny thing is John Colin blocked Zeb. So I think we have a very easy A-B problem here, which is either John Colin is a Fed or Zeb Boykin is a Fed. One of those two individuals is a Fed. I need to know who. I need to know who for my safety. But here's the video, and I wanted to highlight this because I didn't end up actually getting to spend too much time on this in particular myself, but I did want to actually cover a bit of this video because I want to cover when they start getting into the drone aspect. I think it's probably right around here. So we're going to take a good bit look. A good bit look. God, I take a couple of days off, bro. I can't even talk. I think it's right around here. So we're going to take a few minutes to listen into this. Hear where John Colin is at on the drones, maybe even just less than a minute or so, but see where they're going. And I'm just going to blow this up beyond my face. So let's play it like this.
Front for the episode that we did a couple days ago. So Jason and I did an episode. I guess it was a Tuesday evening, right? Was it Tuesday
Something
evening?
like that. Yeah.
I think so. All right. So Tuesday evening, Jason and I did an episode because I saw an episode that Jason just did the previous day with the gentleman that had been on site, a guy named Mr. Bartholomew. And
Adam
he's on
Bartholomew.
site.
Right.
Adam Bartholomew. So he films a bunch of stuff. And Jason does a show with him. Jason shows him the content. And I'm watching the show and I'm literally flabbergasted. And I got in touch with Jason. I said, we have got to do a show together. You come on, please, hypothetically speaking, show everybody what you found.
Apologies. Let me, I'll skip forward a little bit. I did want to address a little bit. Somebody who posted that. Yes, the Paramount, that's funny. The Paramount tactical guy glows so bright. He's still playing the body armor narrative still. I can't remember if that's one of the guys. Oh, and funny enough, I should have sent this to Zeb. I forgot to. At the end of Ian Carroll's video, his most recent one that got a lot of play, he does have OTO at the very end there. I've followed some stuff from Valhalla VFT. I don't think he glows in particularly. I need to watch some more of him, to be honest. I like a lot of Valhalla's content. I'm pretty sure that's that. Hopefully it's not just because I have Valhalla in my on my brain. The funny thing with this is, even with this element, right? Even with this, I just mentioned John Cohen Block, that guy. Crowdsource the Truth and a lot of other people who are like involved with these guys have been going back and forth with each other relentlessly. Supposedly, there's even an argument that like they think that some of the guys in this space are feds themselves, trying to continually say dumb things so people keep going off on tangents and losing the actual kind of real grasp of what they're even there for. And so maybe there is an element of that. It's hard to know. I do think there are certain people on YouTube alone that glow like crazy. I'm not sure if I would consider them one of them, but let me not that. Lord have mercy. Let me make this bigger. And let's see if I can't find the part here that we're going for. Oh, we're going to do a face reveal, guys. Okay, let's find this.
Yeah. So we did the show Tuesday night. I think on my channel, I think it might be up to like 25,000 views now, which is way beyond anything I've had in recent times. So we did that show Tuesday night, sharing your findings. Then you see another Waspman. So was this an egret? Is this a heron? I mean, it was almost that. It's like we were like, huh?
I think it's this one. Yeah, it might be an egret, but there's a lot of eagles I've learned that live in Utah. We'll keep going, and we'll talk about the eagles.
All right. So this is either an egret or a heron.
They make the point that there's a lot of stuff here that you don't need to pay attention to, but they do go ahead, and I'll just find it until they get it on the yellow. There we go. This is where it goes. So then there is, after the shot's fired, an unknown object flies over the crowd in a fast orbital pattern. So they said the majority of this is birds, but there is one that gives them, I think it's two actually. There are two of them that they believe fully are drones. So here it is.
A synopsis of what we did the other night. And the net of it is we leave the show, everybody's kind of stunned. There's 5 UAVs at the shooting, and these are not DJI Mavics. These are not photographic drones, which if we go to, so when you get a chance, you go over.
I'll be honest, that one looks very much like a bird to me. Oh, I'm not even going to lie to you.
To the PDF, and you open up the PDF I sent you. The first picture is in there because it was taken by Turning Point USA's drone. So they did have a photographic drone there that was taking some pictures and stuff like that. But the stuff that Jason found isn't flying at 250 feet and hovering. Stuff Jason found is flying right over everybody's heads at about 150 miles an hour. And the fascinating thing that, like, I just couldn't let go, nobody notices them. Nobody.
He spends time, so I keep muting myself, so I want to make sure it's loud enough. but there is one, right? So they cover this. I think it's this one. I don't know if it's video, but they do get like probably the clearest image you're going to get there of that. I think this to me is a far cry. I'm going to say, I think the, birds are feds. I'll be honest. I do think on this end, official narrative Mogs. I think it's going to be too hard of a sell to push that. To extend from that, though, the reason why I bring it up is because John Colin, I think I'm forgetting his name now. He's went above and beyond and started a new investigation because supposedly, from what I understand, is that in that region of Utah, they actually were doing like military drills with what did they say? With aerial deployed drones, meaning drones that are basically loaded in a plane, and once it crosses a certain area, they trump all these out. And these planes kind of deploy, or these drones deploy from a plane. And so I guess he's looking into more of that, if there possibly would have been any of these in the area when that had happened. But again, I think official narrative by far just solos here. I'm going to be honest. As much as I think the official narrative is a bunch of, nonsense, I still, I think it's not enough here whatsoever. The sniper drone tards need to stop. Yeah. I think like the camera guns. We got camera guns. We got a lot, to be honest. And that's the thing too. It's like, that's been my take this entire time. It's like, we are still entirely in the dark. And in fact, I think the way this is kind of moved, the new position is, we're in the dark. The majority of people, maybe they're not like Israel did it or intelligence agency did it. They're just kind of like, it seems odd, like, okay. But to go on stage and do this whole rah, like, I forgive him. I mean, like, we went from accusation and we skipped conviction to now we're forgiving him. And like, I don't like that at all, right? Like, I just don't. I don't like that aspect of it because he's not even been tried in court. And in this country, you are innocent until proven guilty. So to me, it was like, that was no better than when the media runs with mugshots. And it's like, this guy allegedly did this accused thing that he was accused of allegedly. And then it's like their face everywhere. I'm not just saying any defense of the guy, but just on principle alone, it's like, can we like have the court case first before, and maybe that's the other element of it, which is it was just a raw performance. She doesn't really like forgive him in her heart. She's just going along with, basically how I imagine what that was, not even that nefarious. I imagine that, Alex Clark or somebody from TPUSA went, hey girl, this is your time to shine. If you want to be a girl boss, you need to run through this script. You need to take this by the balls. And she did. And not to say that she, wouldn't have that capacity already being around Charlie that much, but it came off very much so in that fashion. So that's point 14. We arrive to the final point 15, which is the Woodbury building. And that brings up a entirely new perspective on this. And this came out super late, actually. But there was a photo of a person walking up to the Woodbury building. I can't remember the timing of it, but they essentially, as they're walking up to the building, they catch someone standing on the Woodbury building. But why is this important? I will say at first, I think it's a stretch to be able to say anything at all is in this footage. But you have this video here, this photo that catches this blip of what appears to be this person. Oh, again, I'll make it a bit bigger. And what you'll see here is this again lines up with on the right-hand side of Charlie. Again, not coming from the official narrative angle. That's where that person is. It's on that side. The only issue though, however, is if I go back to the timestamp of the Ian Carroll video, he covers this as well. Actually, I think it's around here. It's like the 53-minute mark, 53:18. Where did he have this up on? 53:18. So the reason why I think it's a nothing burger is two reasons. One, The camera's moving. It's like switching sides. It's quick. It's from walking up, and you can see this. I'll forgive me. I need to bring this one over. So as they're walking up, the way they're walking is down that strip where the brick is at. They're walking towards that building. So they're walking away from us towards. So they're basically walking from here this way. So I can get it on screen well. Let me actually do this. So they're walking from here. They're heading this way. So this is where the video footage came from. But what you'll catch in that footage is on that roof, it's a split second. It looks like there's a head of an individual there. The only issue that Ian Carroll goes on to show, which I won't play here, but he goes on to show from the Google Earth video, or the Google Earth map, if you will, that it's just not possible. Well, not possible in the sense that there's no roof access from that video footage for that person to get to where they need to be to take the shot that would line up with the unofficial narrative. So I do think that, again, is another point towards the official narrative. It's more of a distraction. It's looky here, but it's ultimately meaningless. It's not where we need to be looking at all. That, my friends, is me attempting to go through 15 minutes and trying to steelman that, and it's impossible. And I think that's the point. You can't steelman it. There's some things that I think you could, that are subjective. I think the big one would be the rifle video, because a lot of people are on one side or the other. Some people think they can clearly see a strap getting swung down. Some people think they can clearly see him, draping the towel back over for a split second before running down the grassy knoll. And some people think it's all BS. They don't see anything. They think there's no way. Some people think that the text messages exchanged are entirely bogus. So there's so many subjective elements of this, and people are split. And there's really kind of three factions to this. You have the Israel did it. You have the official narrative believers, like Andrew Korvel of all people. I trust Kesh Patel and the FBI and the three-letter agencies. Like, yeah, that's exactly why nobody turns into you, brother. It's just very subjective. And that's why I think, to me, a show of good faith would be them releasing the initial 3 seconds of the extended video footage of the shooter running from across the rooftop, off and jumping down, to show at least some level on video that he did indeed take the shot. And that would at least connect him to firing that. And I guess then the question would be, if he fired that, it would at least connect it. It would definitively connect that person, the individual there, and also suppress, at least to some level, the other narrative that the shooter was at the other side, that we don't have video footage of them firing their rifle from. So that's a couple points we made there. Let me know what you guys think. I can run a poll. I'll run a poll. I guess I'll just do two options here. I'll just do official narrative. Let me just do who's right. Maybe that's a better way to frame it. We'll do official narrative versus unofficial narrative. Official versus unofficial. And also, I do appreciate everybody being in here. I apologize if not responded to all the comments. Okay, so just sent that. That'll be a poll. We'll see where the audience is at. I think the majority of my audience does lean towards that Israel did it. Not saying that you guys have, went towards the, no reservations. Israel did it's almost kind of like just saying intelligence agencies. And I think there's even a split or a nuance you could make there. I'm going to be honest. It's definitely not the official narrative. And I'm kind of curious then what the motive becomes. What are they covering up? So let's even just entertain the possibility that it's not Israel, but they're still covering it up. And then that goes to why, right? That goes to then that doesn't make any sense at all. So to me, on its surface, it's like, well, then, yeah, revert back to Israel, because that's the only one I think I have and would be able to define motive for. But then it just also becomes a bit easier to believe that maybe this kid did pull this off. But it's hard. It's hard to believe that, right? It's not hard to believe that somebody like that would carry it out. I think it's hard to believe that without all of the definitive evidence connecting everything. And I said this, like I said it before, I'll say it again. We live in a zero trust society. So not only does that mean like, I don't trust the government, right? Like people didn't trust the government like, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. It's like been a thing for a long, long time. It's that we are in a zero trust society, as in nobody trusts even what the media says. And that's been happening for some time. This is why people started flocking to alternate media. And now we are at a we are at a base level 0. So again, the fact that nobody trusts anybody, not even random YouTubers, right? An example of that literally just happened because I was not confirming the bias of an individual in this chat earlier. I am supposedly working for the government. Zero trust society. And that's why I think my biggest pushback against Nick would have been, like, I don't think people are retarded to fall down these rabbit holes because there's no base level for belief anymore. Everything is possible. And on the other hand, you're getting told don't believe all that craziness, but also believe that Charlie Kirk's bones were so dense it stopped a round that would kill 3 elks and blow through a refrigerator door. So, like, am I supposed to believe in magic or am I not supposed to believe in magic? And it gets to it begins to be a little bit nonsensical on those ends. So I don't have any problems with people who are believing these kind of in crazy theories, the ones that I'd call crazy. The problem that I have is similar to where Nick's was at, which was the people who immediately with no reservations couldn't be told anything else and were unwilling to see any evidence, actually were saying, I don't need any evidence, were the ones where it's like, okay, maybe we like don't just jump to that. Like, I get it. I lean that way too, but maybe we just like wait a little bit like that. I get it, but like we can at least wait. And that's also in the element still. And it just shows me a lot of individuals here still don't understand the optics and how important they are as it relates to winning, right? And this goes to a bit more comprehensive and robust strategic position to have when it comes to winning. And it comes from not about just winning, but understanding where we are in the social environment, the social climate. We are, I am a Groiper, right? And so there is an element of all of us who are on the boat of Christian nationalism, who do want Israeli influence to be, eliminated from our government, and not be beholden to interests outside of our nation. You have to understand the game that's been played for a very, 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 very long time. And to think that all of the work, all of the other individuals who have been banned before, basically everybody else that you can think of who tried pushing these sentiments out, there does come an element of you have to be on your A game. You have to understand that any slip up, the system will crush you. And so that's part of it. And it's clear that there are still, and probably a lot of them being young men who just don't get it. But there is an element of that, which is like the end goal is to win. It's to not forever sit here and complain about things that constantly happen to us because we're in a losing position. It is to ultimately be able to win and rectify, correct, and establish the things we otherwise would have wanted had we been in power from the first place. So that's just kind of a side point there. I know most of you guys understand that and get that, but I do think there's a lot of you who think that we're going to appeal to all the grandmas on the planet by screaming the hardest R possible. Doesn't mean I don't find it funny. Doesn't mean I don't say it either. It just means I understand there is a time and place for everything. Even Professor Oak doesn't let you pull out your bike in the middle of different paths and routes in Pokemon. You have to know when, where, and how. You don't understand those elements, you might as well pack it up and go home. You're just making it harder for the rest of us. And that's honest truth. But to move off of there, speaking of Mr. Nick Fuentes, he had to sit down with Patrick Bet-David, and it was boring. It was actually very boring. So I covered it, or I watched it, I should say, and I ended up almost putting it at 2 times speed. It really was not anything I expected it to be. And what's crazy is the Candace Owens interview was way more contentious than what this one was. I had actually had in my mind that if Patrick Bet-David had ever had Nick Montrez on, it ultimately probably would have been, oh, his name is Jew Scott. Okay, Jew Scott. Listen, I would never put any effort to further integrate or welcome myself to the Iranian who is in my country. But I'll take you at your word for it, Mr. Jew Scott. So the funny thing was, it opened up with like a 5-minute monologue of Patrick Bet-David explaining himself. It was a little aggressive, to be honest, but you know, he had it out there. It wasn't as bad as some of the ones that I've seen before from people who give these kind of pre-emos with Nick. But it started with the N-word. The N-word was consistent through it, and it didn't end on the N-word. But there was like multiple times, bro, Patrick Bet-David brought up, or Jewish Scott, whoever you want me to call him, multiple times he brought up the N-word and how that was like his biggest problem with Nick. It wasn't like his positions or anything. He like multiple times he was like, when you do this like rah stuff. And then it wasn't anything about that. It was just like the N-word. And then there's a weird point where Patrick Bet-David like tries flexing to Nick. He's like, you know what I do with my sons if I ever find out they said the N-word? No, I don't care. Like, you know, he was trying to, stretch that to Nick. I just thought it was sad how many times he did bring it up. It's multiple times he tried bringing that up there. And a lot of it was just his background, you know, and I've heard this 100 times now, from Nick himself, from Nick on his own show. And that seems to be where a lot of people end up going on these interviews. So the first kind of hour of it, you could kind of throw away because it's him going through Cassie Dillon. It's him going through, you know, how he was caught, you know, basically got on a snook attack on camera. It's him, how he was originally pro-Israel, then he was woken up to it. And, you know, and he starts looking at like, wait a minute, why are all these Jews in power? So it was, you know, this is the same kind of like, you know, introduction we've gotten for a while. So where it did begin to heat up a little bit though, was they got to immigration for a bit. And the focus though there from Nick was him highlighting the fact that he noticed a pattern, which was all non-whites seem to vote as if they are a monolith, which is to say, like, you know, black individuals vote like 90% black. I think it's almost like there's certain elections that's been like 97% black. It's been aggressively like, you know, one-sided. He brings up that, you know, Asians, Hispanics are not nearly as bad, but they are also in like kind of the high 70 to 80% clips. I think high 70s even for Asians. But that kind of red pilled him a little bit. And this kind of led into the Donald Trump thing, but that was kind of, he recognized that there are clear demographic voting patterns, and like that clearly should be a thing that matters, given the fact that at the end of the day, winning an election is how many pieces of paper can you get with your name on it. I mean, it's like, you know, there are certain elements of strategy here. But then it moves on to Cassie Dillon, back and forth. I think Patrick Bet-David was terrified to move on to anything aggressive, which is why I think he kept honing back. And it was weird because they start off with his background. They started to move to a couple of different topics. Then I think PBD kind of gets scared a little bit, and he's like, "Oh, we'll go back to your story, your upbringing, you know, years ago." And then they get a little bit further along, and then they even end on it. Like the end of the show, it's him like, well, why don't you go back to that Cassie Dillon thing and kind of, you know, keep going from your story there until we end the show. That read off to me like either one, he was unprepared into this last minute, or two, he had other materials, but was afraid of the, you know, the gall of Nick. And so decided maybe ultimately this is not worth, you know, blowing myself up over. Pun intended, he is a Syrian. Charlie Kirk was another big section of this, which I did appreciate some of what Nick's talking points of that was. But just for a second, I'll come back into the chat here. We have Carl Johansson says, it's great that American Jews have divided loyalty and all other immigrants should do the same thing. That's basically PBD's take at the end. Yeah, I was actually most shocked, and I was about to get into it, but I was most shocked that that he brought up Ehud Barak and Epstein and was clearly pointing at the fact that he does think there is clear Israeli involvement there. That would, to me, was like, where did this come from, Patrick? And then we have this next one here from Jason M. Schmidt. He says, I'm surprised that Patrick Bet-David didn't call him or refer to him as son. Listen, son, was definitely inferred the entire interview. Yeah, this is and he said that point blank, actually. I think he said, don't take this as me talking as if I'm in a higher position than you. Take this as if I'm talking to you, dad, father to son, or like unc to brother or something like that. He did say that verbatim at some point. But on the Charlie Kirk element, and to this day, no one has done as good of a eulogy as Nick did, the first couple of days after Charlie Kirk passing, which is, I think, is telling for one. But he lets it be known that, his professional opinion remained unchanged on Charlie Kirk. But, what he kind of had thought who Charlie was changed, on a personal level, the kind of man that Charlie was, that came to a bit more of light. And it kind of used to be that it was one-dimensional. But that had changed hardcore, going from like this, basic cheerleader, right? MAGA cheerleader, establishment cheerleader, to he really was an example for Christ for the people here in America. And not only just that, Charlie went to a lot of different events. He traveled all around the country. He also did international things. And that was the thing that I picked up from the Alex Clark and Andrew Colvert tell-all show, which was that Charlie Kirk was even unafraid to spread the gospel in foreign countries, even in Asian countries such as Japan and South Korea. They're open to it, but Japan is less so. Japan has different sects of it. It just kind of, I guess it depends a little bit on where you're at in Japan. But then Nick gave him his flowers for that. And regardless of what you really think, you can clearly look, the reaction from people has been going to church, reinstilling values, being godly people. And that I think is good. I do think that is good. I think even with everything else going around it, you can just say, I think that's good. Like even me personally, I've had friends who have texted me saying, I've never felt closer to God. I've never felt more empowered, more fired up, to get in my Bible and, and really get into this. I think that's good. And I think that is clearly an objective impact of Kirk. And, but the big point there though, and I think probably why he was so adamantly positioned against the left, was that it was in that moment, Nick says that he realized how much more he had in common with Charlie than he did basically anybody left of that, left of that spot. And which I think, he didn't say, but I think implied there was maybe there were times in which he lost sight of the bigger picture there and maybe did get a little bit too tunnel visioned with his beef with Charlie. And obviously they did view each other as rivals or arch nemesis, whatever term you'd like to use there. But I thought that was great. It moved on to Thomas Rousseau. We touched a little bit on Thomas Rousseau, basically didn't talk too much about it, gave his same opinion, which is he didn't like the militancy, thought there's better ways to do activism, but liked the work ethic that he sees from Thomas Rousseau. They did talk about the JQ, but in the acceptable demeanor. So some of the points that they brought up, basically, Patrick Bet-David brings up, even if these people are these, they're super beings and they can collectivize and they can be at the top of these institutions. He was like, what becomes wrong with that? And, Nick pushes back and he goes, well, here in America, like the government and the way our system is built is that everything is supposed to be of, by, and for the people. And if you are having individuals who are able to extol extreme amounts of influence and are not of, by, and for the people, then obviously you have a clear problem. I liked his answer a lot on there, and I think Patrick Bet-David did not have anywhere to go. And the idea obviously being that, yes, if you do have clear groups, and they also brought up places like Scientology and Mormonism, those who have this kind of extreme in-group preference and allegiance to themselves, and with the Jewish angle as well, an overwhelming allegiance to a foreign nation. So that adds another element to it, right? This dual loyalty to a nation that's outside of there, whereas Mormonism and Scientology doesn't kind of bring in that or rope in that aspect. But the shocking part was that he did, and in comparison to Islam, but Nick did say he does think that, that Judaism and Jews in general in the West is a gross, not net, gross positive, especially when compared to Islam. So he did say that. And that's part of the monologue in the beginning of Patrick Bet David is Patrick Bet David says, hey, I think all of my Jews in the audience are going to love this. All my pro-Israeli friends are going to love this. And I didn't kind of have an idea of what he meant by that until I saw that. And so it was kind of a okay. You know, it's like a very, very minor point. I don't think it was anything crazy at all. And that final point there on PBD being that he also did have his suspicions with Epstein. And basically pointing out Ehud Barak, like nobody has 30 different visits in person when you didn't have that strong of a connection to each other. It's like clearly something is awry there. And I am glad that PBD was able to say that, or Mr. Jew Scott, whatever you guys have been saying. Now, as we get to some of the last pieces here, I was not able to watch the entirety of it, but I will tell you from what I had seen so far, and I was expecting more than maybe what I had got, or maybe I wasn't listening as closely as I should have. I had caught by chance on Ian Carroll's video of, as Tyler Robinson and Patsy examining all the evidence, that towards the end, he was talking about Erica Kirk and trying to walk that fine line and not to, encourage people to be upset or irritated or angry, that Alex Clark announced that she's going to have a tell-all with Erica Kirk. Supposedly, Ian Carroll says that she deleted that post and it's no longer available on her page. I didn't find it on her page either. I didn't even think about it. I did supposedly find it, but it's not posted from her. So we will click into this, actually. Let me go ahead and grab this. It says Alex Clark, Erica Kirk, Alex Clark being another one of these like bimbo, like e-girls, like covert feminists. Like, I don't even really know, but like that's the vibe I get from her. It's all of this. So this is supposedly the promo of that. And maybe I'll make this a bit bigger here. And go ahead and put it up on screen. But this is supposedly a tell-all. She's supposed to sit with Erica Kirk. I don't know if it's been filmed or not yet, or if it's because it's not posted on her page anymore that it's gone. But she did do the tell-all with Andrew Korvel, and that's the one that I did watch. So we'll go ahead and listen to her promo here. It's about 2 minutes long. You kind of get an idea of who she is just from this by itself anyways, but let's let her rip.
Those tribute episodes, they're going to come out Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday next week. We are going to address everything. Charlie's thoughts on Israel, if he was offered $150 million in hush money, how him and Erica handled disagreements, what his vacations were like with his family, if he was in the process of converting to Catholicism, his last week on earth, his last hours on earth, if Erica feels good about the suspect who was arrested, and his thoughts on education and so much more. Now, I do chime in and I share in these episodes too, so this isn't the last you're going to hear from me about him.
So the part that I'm confused about is she actually asked all of those exact same questions to Andrew Korvel. And I can't imagine like tomorrow she's going to interview Erica Kirk or like in a couple of days and then ask all of the same questions over again. So to me, it's almost like she maybe got ahead of herself and Erica turned her down and is unwilling to go up and answer these questions, or something else going on. So just to point that out, because this is what we got instead. So let me go to this one. So this is the newest one that she posted. So the one that I have is from September 21st from 7:30 in the morning, 2025. Yes. And you can see in the comments here, let me blow this up actually. Look at the comments on this. People are calling her out. So if you look at this here, so this is from Uncover Report. It's not from Alex herself. And so they, I'm assuming wanting to boost her, also post this to help boost it up. And so people are saying, is she doing an interview with Alex Clark? No, she doesn't. She insinuates the interview with Erica, but no, it's with Andrew K., his BF. That guy was like just mad. It's funny. Gronk, did she delete the video? Where did she post it? Because I can't find it. Interesting. So let's say that. Does she say Erica Kirk? Let's listen in.
Those tribute episodes, they're going to come out Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday next week. We are going to address everything. Charlie's thoughts on Israel, if he was offered $150 million in hush money, how him and Erica handled disagreements, what his vacations were like with his family, if he was in the process of converting to Catholicism, his last week on earth, his last hours on earth, if Erica feels good about the suspect who was arrested, and his thoughts on education and so much more. Now, I
think that's it right there. If Erica feels good, right? Wouldn't you automatically assume if someone says that, you're like asking them, not a third party person, how they think that she feels? Like, doesn't that seem a little bit odd there?
I'm in and I share in these episodes too. So this isn't the last you're going to hear from me about him. But I just want you to know that.
But maybe she will. I mean, like, she deleted the video, but maybe she will. She said, what, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday? So it looks like there'll be multiple tribute videos coming out. Maybe one of them will be Eric Kirk. I just find it hard to believe she would ask all those same questions to the same person. You do it 3 times in a row. That seems, maybe it's just me, but I think that's dumb. So instead, we got her own promo from her actual page. And like you'll see here, it's all the same questions. Was he offered $150 million? Was he becoming Catholic? Does it say anything about Erica Kirk? Yeah, it doesn't say Erica, but what was his marriage like behind the scenes from day to day? Why did his team start taking down cameras? Right? So it's, so maybe Erica Kirk canceled at the last minute. Or maybe Alex Clark was confused. It could be something as simple as that. You know, don't always need to be extremely nefarious in those means, but it's something to notice. So that's why I checked it on her page, but I did watch it. So here's the promo from this one. I'll play it a little bit of the Andrew Clover. What's that? What his name is? He has such a gay name, and he's so gay. This guy has to be gay, dude. There's no way he's a heterosexual. I'm not even trying to be mean, dude, but like, if you are not homosexual, can you at least like remove the mannerisms? You'll see.
$150 million from Israel.
Charlie would not accept foreign money.
One of our last conversations, he said, Alex, I'm really worried. Like, this is really serious, isn't it?
If you want to know the truth, Charlie was bored by politics.
Was he becoming Catholic?
No.
I always describe you as...
Okay. So because I don't want to get annihilated from copyright, I didn't realize there was all that music going to be on there. Probably already did, unfortunately, but that's that. So it's the same promo, same questions, same everything from this. And I'll put him on screen. Get his homosexual face on screen. So that's Andrew Clover. This is where the infamous tweet comes from, that supposedly this is the guy who's become the spokesperson to talk about how he talked to the surgeon, he talked about the autopsy. So he's become the spokesperson for that. From this, though, and I'll just run through some of the answers that I did catch. And this is some of the stuff that I did catch. I only made it to like, it's only 47 minutes long, but it was the last thing I watched. I made it to like the 20-minute mark, wherever that's at. She has it timestamped out, but I made it through the Israel conservatives arguing section, which is like critical of Israel section, which is like one of the bigger sections there. So what they do talk about in this, which I think pretty much paints the picture that Erica Kirk will be taking over for TPUSA, there's a section in there called Protecting from Opportunists. And so Alex Clark basically asked Mr. Andrew Clover, right? I cannot remember his name. Basically asked him, like, are you going to protect her from opportunists? Basically meaning, you know, are you going to be a white knight and defend this woman from bad men? Which he gives the answer I could have expected him to give. Oh no, she's super smart. She's a boss girl. She's like the girl version of Charlie. He does say, like, he caveats, it is feminine, but they have like the same kind of drive. They have the same kind of engine, which I do think, you know, is something to behold. But it was a lot more of the boss girl. You know, she's so cool, man. She's gonna run stuff, guys. I'm so excited for it. Anyways, but she did Alex Clark did ask point blank, you know, does Erica have full confidence that we got the right shooter? And you know what his answer was? He says, I think so. We'll wait for more evidence to come out. I like it, dude. You could have had a tribute to Charlie and entirely omitted anything about like forgiving the guy. Because like I said earlier, forgiving the guy circumvents the conviction. You go from accusation to forgiveness, and he goes to automatically guilty in most people's minds. I'll say it again. Dude, here in America, you are innocent until proven guilty, and the government has not, just have not presented a preponderance of evidence that has removed my reasonable doubt. That's the way it works here. And I do think that is shitty. I think that wasn't even real. I don't even think she feels that way. I think that was, again, a performance drawn out to take full on advantage of the emotional manipulation of all these people who are coming to closer grips with God. And I quite honestly find it to be extremely disgusting. I don't want to go too harsh, I guess, on the opinions. Try to have some level of grace for what has happened to her. But at the same time, I'm not going to just lie to you because I'm like, well, I don't want to make Erica feel bad. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I have kids and family too. Like, I don't give a shit. And sorry, I try not to curse all the time. Away from Erica Kirk, though, going directly to some of the last bits from Charlie Kirk. So now they open up with some basic stuff about Charlie, which is kind of cool. They talk about how he shared the gospel internationally, but here's the kind of beef of it. So Alex, she lets it be known that she actually had private conversations with Charlie about infighting. Well, I hesitate to say conversations. It sounded like it was a conversation and it didn't go far. But it was clear that from what she'd got from Charlie was that he was concerned about what they were seeing in the infighting in the Conservative Party, or really the conservative wing online. And we see that all the time. It's woke right versus woke light versus the 2012 liberals. It's a bunch of factions in there. What he does say, though, that were affirmatives, or negatives, I should say, affirming negatives, was he says Andrew said no, that Charlie was not becoming Catholic. But he did say that Charlie loved Catholic Mass and the beauty and tradition of it. So there's a couple elements going on there. He also lets it be known that Erica was a cradle Catholic, so there's some connections there, and that also Erica herself multiple times has also essentially said that no, they're not Catholic. They just enjoy going to the Mass. Because he made a point that Charlie didn't enjoy having service in a basketball gym or something along those lines. Which I get, to be fair, when you see the court lines on the ground, it makes it feel very not like you're not taking it seriously. And that's not to make fun of people who are, in poor situations and can't gold plate everything. It is just to say, like, there are options elsewhere, right? And I think some people clearly have a desire to have that, and less of the basic non-church or less church kind of vibes that come from Protestantism. But what Alex Clark does confirm is that there was donor pressure for allowing Tucker to speak at TPUSA events. They do confirm that. Andrew Colvett claims, though, that TPUSA does not have a lot of Jewish donors. So Andrew Colvett is claiming that what everyone is saying at or about the financing of TPUSA is wrong. So that's one thing I'll spend some more time on digging on. Again, it was the last edition here. But that is a claim being made by Andrew Colvett, and I think one that could probably be easily proven or disproven. But he does say that TPUSA does not have a lot of Jewish donors. I find that hard to believe, unless I've been getting lied to, but I find it hard to believe. What he does say, though, Andrew Colvett says, he claims, right, or he alleges that no, there was not a $150 million deal on the table. He said, no, it didn't happen, fake news. So that's kind of the beef of what I was able to make it through there with, the first half of that. I do plan on watching the second half at some point later tonight, but I did want to update you guys with where I was at with everything. That is largely the bulk of what I wanted to cover. There is one other element, though, that actually is a bit more of a news story and less of a reaction content. So Google shocked a lot of people today because they pledged a reinstatement of banned YouTube creators on their platform. So I have the kind of X summary here, but you don't really need to see anything. That's not the headline. And it's kind of abysmal that is becoming the headline. This is the headline. This is the headline. Make this bigger. YouTube admits it censored Americans at the request of the Biden administration. They finally said what we knew was happening years down the road. Now, this is the headline. The headline is not that, Google's going to bring people back. Yeah, that's great. That's secondary to what the actual headline is, which is they came out and said it. We have been violating your First Amendment right in this country, and we did it because Joe Biden asked us to. Now, good thing that they're bringing the creators back. I think that's great. If you read into it, though, they caveat that with, Lord have mercy, let me grab this. They caveat that with from 2023 to 2024. That's like the verbatim language they use. So it's not even like they're extending it through COVID. Or let me find it here. Yes. Okay. So it's a limited time frame. So here's the part. So it's on Disclose TV. I want to make sure I grab the right one. And I will zoom it up so you guys can see this. And I will say, I'm going to make this point too first. We'll look at this here in a second. To whoever said, consequences Google face zero, like, yeah, and I agree, and it shouldn't be the case. My thing is like, yeah, who from YouTube is going to be going to jail for this? Right? Like, who from YouTube and who from Google is going to go stand trial from violating millions of people's First Amendment rights? That case needs to be had. It can't just be that we have we're finger wagging at Joe Biden as he sits in the nursing home and we don't, do anything ultimately. It needs to be like, who at YouTube went along with this and didn't say a word until now? Figure out who else knew, who had opportunities to tell and didn't. Get them out of YouTube. They should no longer be anywhere near any level of power as it pertains itself to social media, discourse, digital media, anything. Remove them completely. Throw them in jail for all I care. They have shown forever they can never and will never be allowed near levers of power again. But this is from Disclose TV. So this is, again, they admit that over the COVID pandemic. But here's the part you need to look at. The company terminated channels for repeatedly violating its community guidelines on elections integrity content through 2023 and COVID-19 content through 2024. Today, YouTube's community guidelines allow for a wider range of content regarding COVID and elections integrity. So that right there, they're putting a time limit on it. They're doing it way late. Guys, when was COVID? Was COVID in 2023? Was COVID in 2024? Was COVID in 2025? Was COVID even really 2022? They're basically limiting it to people who are nicked really at the very far end. They say politically charged content. It's really just about COVID and the electioneering stuff. And it's not going to be like they're not going to bring Nick back. Like, Nick falls way outside the time range here, and it wasn't even over either of those events. So it's like, who's really going to be coming back? I mean, like, all I can really think of is like, wow, maybe I'll get a strike. I think one of my strikes is from that. So maybe I'll go back to being a strikeless channel. And I think that'd be cool. Maybe Steven Crowder can come back and his channel go back to being strikeless because all of his was about the electioneering and the COVID-19. But, a little too late to be helpful to any of us. We kind of already knew it, moved past it, and solved for it. But this kind of, I think, goes along the same lines, which is what we're thinking about as it pertains to the assassin, which is we live in a society. Our society is largely built around the fact that we have incentive structure, cost, incentive, reward, all of it. And so to think that we can operate in a society that has any respect for the law, yet when people violate said social contract, they face no cost or consequences, you are lying to yourself. And quite frankly, once again, I'll say this again, you probably need to get out of the way because you're not helping anybody. So it's very limited. And again, I think this is one of those things that, and I'm not even joking with you. It's been kind of eye-opening with how many meetings that Donald Trump has had with Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates. I am a little concerned that we're going to see Donald Trump, come out and smack Mark Zuckerberg on the behind and give him a nice pat on the back. And that guy deserves to be in prison. And especially when Donald Trump is the civil magistrate, we need to expect that the civil magistrate upholds the law and enacts justice in all situations, not just the ones that, we feel emotionally, attached to, which we do need those in there as well. But no more of this, Zuckerberg was like, hey, I had two hands on the whole election. I basically, raped it from the American people. Can you really blame me, guys? Like, hey, I have cool meta glasses. Throw that guy in prison. At this point, he's not even an American. I'm not, you can call him whatever you want. He's a lizard person. He's whatever. He's not an American. He doesn't believe in American values. He might be white, but he's not an American in spirit and in essence. And for those reasons, Mark Zuckerberg does need to go to prison. And I don't care how many different court cases need to be tried. The guy clearly needs to go. And what was the term? There was guys who did really great work. It was about the superfluous election interfering, which basically was talking about all of the kind of things that have invisible metrics, such as search suggestions, things that don't have strong data points for. But there's these couple guys, and I wish I could remember who they were, but they outlined on Tim Pool's show. Maybe somebody can remind me who they were. And this has been years since then. But they basically were talking about all these things, and they called it superfluous. I believe that was the term. But largely the concept here was when a left-winger would type in, Donald Trump, one of their search suggestions would be, did you remember to vote today? Or something along those lines. On the flip side, it would be the other way around. Like on Facebook, when known liberals or left-leaning individuals would get on Facebook, it would remind them, did you vote today? And it would also show like a picture of Joe Biden or something. But if you were a Republican or your shadow profile was deemed to be that you were right-leaning or a conservative, you didn't get it at all. It wouldn't show up in your search suggestion. It wouldn't show up on your Facebook. And those were things that were operated by Facebook and other elements of Google and Silicon Valley that no one has served time for. So, like at a certain point, it's like, again, whether it's Mark Zuckerberg, like we know that they clearly were doing it. YouTube was clearly in on it. We need to see people in prison. Perp walked and everything. I don't care if they make a spectacle of that. I would rather they make a spectacle of that than make a spectacle of this performative girl boss bullshit where Erica Kirk doesn't even look like she cares that her husband died a week ago. And I'll be honest, I do find the majority of what they've been doing so far pretty shameless. And to move away from, that story for a second, or for tonight, I was kind of going back and forth. And for me, I guess when I think about it on a couple of different schools of thought, I do think on one end, it's like, hey, like there are 364 other days of the year that you can do this. Secondly, to think that that kind of energy is going to die, forgive me, that's a kind of a bad choice of words, but it's going to dissipate after the memorial service, that you wouldn't be able to at least get, 60 to 50% of the signatures you would have gotten had you done it on the same day. To me, it's just shameless. I wouldn't say that the majority of the speeches I saw were campaigning, but the ones who were from the more notable figures definitely came off as if they were campaigning. I think Erica Kirk was doing more to sell herself as a future pundit for America, kind of putting on a performance to see how willing that she could walk into a, 3.1, take over for Charlie Kirk's account or something along those lines and continue to run that. But it's also shameless that they're continually sending a lot of these different, they're sending out all these newsletters, they're sending emails like, hey, can you donate? The one that Nick had posted was aggressive. I'll put that on screen if I can find that. Huge thank you to Titan for the super chat. I appreciate it, brother. He says, why do they call it a rabbit hole if it's always, yeah, right, exactly. Let me pull this up from Nick. I believe it's his most recent post, actually. And there it is. This is disgusting. So this is from Nick, but this is what he posted, and I'll make it bigger. But it's essentially, here's a newsletter from Erica Kirk. It says, "Here I am, Lord. I will carry Charlie's torch. Turning Point USA, Patriot. I don't know how else to begin, except with this. I miss him. Every breath, every heartbeat. Like that to me is like we're getting very, very close to like playing on pure emotional manipulation. Maybe it's some people's strokes. Like it's not mine. Maybe I just have a different way I feel about it, to be honest with you. I think it's shameless. Like, I wouldn't mind that as much if we didn't get the, voter registration and selling merchandise on top of like the WWE mega church, like, Farah coming on. Like, you would have thought like what it looked like was like the Iron Man landed for the first time in Iron Man 1, and he's like, "I'm Iron Man." That's what it was coming off to me as. It was very aggressively over the top. But I could handle like this newsletter. I could handle that if all the other stuff wasn't there. And I could have probably let it go had it just been like this one performative thing. But I'm going to be honest. I think they're going to milk this until people start getting pissed off. They might seriously milk this. Now, one thing I'd kind of thought of too, maybe they'll milk it just because they think maybe they have nobody else. Like Charlie Kirk was it. Maybe there is a belief that like they need to recoup money as fast as possible because Charlie Kirk was the engine of the entire operation. Also, thank you. That was close. 667 became a watcher. Thank you very much, brother. Get a nice Orthodox cross to be next to your name. Appreciate that very much, man. I will. I have a couple crosses in there. I don't know if anyone's made it to the 4th tier. I know Tix is on tier 2, I believe. It's either tier 2 or tier 3. I think Donnie might have tier 4. I haven't seen him in here in a little bit. I did that almost a few months ago, actually. But make that for what you will, and I will say there is something to be said about all of the people who seemingly are maybe not so synthetic, but are in their feelings about how far we're going with the questions we ask. I'm going to be honest. Like again, no trust society, all of that, right? The thing is like, I don't care. Like, do you seriously, like who seriously is going to care about Erica Kirk's emotional well-being more than what they care about getting the truth of what's happening in their country? It's like, if you say that you would rather have that, then like, okay, then I guess we're just not in the same camp. But I don't care. Or like, I just care about what's being honest, what's being truthful. And you can't let it slip either too. All of the official narrative, everything is in the wake of this same administration sitting there and telling you with beady Indian eyes, no, Jeffrey Epstein did actually harm himself. He did not traffic minors to anyone. He actually did nothing. We're getting close to the point where Kash Patel is going to say that Jeffrey Epstein was an upstanding guy and maybe he needs to be president or he could have been president one day. Like, it's getting to that point. And, again, you throw that all in a blender, and it's no wonder why we're getting a lot of people who just want to tune out. Can't do it anymore. Don't care. Tired of being lied to. If they're going to die in 10 years, why not just play video games and not care anyways? And that's part of the battle. Half the battle, if you will. That is where I am going to end it. I appreciate you guys tremendously. Hopefully this was a big upgrade from some of the last couple of streams. I will begin to put this much effort into them from the future. I would like to actually prepare a show for you and it not be just some kind of casual me like nodding along or going through a basic list of itinerary, if you will. So hopefully you guys appreciated that. And again, I am off the official narrative. I've never been on the official narrative bandwagon, but I am officially at this point that someone did it, and I don't think it was Tyler Robinson. Somebody else was involved. Maybe there was intelligence agencies involved. All I know is the government has not met the burden of presenting enough evidence for me to say, yeah, that's him. At least not to me. But thank you guys very much. I do appreciate you guys tremendously. And I thank you very much, Mr. Alex Barton. Christ is King. support Kash Patel. You know, I do pray for Charlie Kirk's family. And I do hope that this revival of Christianity continues to run rampant through the nation. It's a good thing to see. And it's a beautiful thing to know that of all the things that people got from Charlie Kirk, that was what they were willing to move for. And it does kind of put into perspective just how important, impactful, and meaningful all of the Christian martyrs have been to the faith. And they are the reason why the faith continues to move, touch hearts, and is able to reach the hearts and minds of many people. So props to Charlie for that. But on the other side of that, we need to ban women. Pam Bondi probably needs to go to jail at this point too, and probably in a kitchen somewhere for a very, very, very long time. I appreciate you guys. I'll see you next time. Take care, everybody, and have a good rest of your night. Peace.